Well guys, I am back from vacation. I'm happy to be back. I was in San Francisco, and while I was actually in the area, Apple held a big event. They showed off a bunch of different products, new products, services, things like that, and something really caught a lot of people's attention, which was an Apple credit card. And today I want to talk about how Apple is actually going to make money from this credit card, because I'm getting a lot of messages from people, hey, why would Apple spend all this time promoting this Apple credit card? Why would they have it on the front page of their website? Why would they be showing this off? Like, it doesn't seem like Apple's going to make any money from it. People are very, very confused, and sometimes you got to look a lot deeper than the surface, guys, to find answers on why a company would make a move like this, because we know all businesses, their goal is to obviously make money, right? So there's got to be an angle for Apple to make money in this situation. They wouldn't just do something to do something. There's got to be an angle. There's got to be something they think they can do better to hopefully help them make a lot more money, and I want to explain that into today's video, okay? So if you have not seen the Apple credit card, basically it's a pretty cool card in the sense it doesn't even have numbers or anything on it, so it's pretty revolutionary in that respect. Most credit cards and debit cards out there, they all show all the numbers and things like that, and if anybody ever actually stole your credit card or debit card, they could just, type it in online, buy anything from Amazon or things like that. They got the CVV on there, they got the credit card numbers, the month, the date, everything. They got everything they pretty much need, okay? Now Apple, as far as how Apple is branding this card, they say this is the Apple card, a new kind of credit card created by Apple, not a bank. So obviously Apple is branding this as this card is something special. We created this. It's going to be way better for you than what the banks have created and things like that, okay? Now, Bank of America's response to this, they took some shots coming back. Bank of America tech chief says there's nothing new about the Apple card. The quote was, "My reaction when I saw the announcement was, first, competitively, all of the features that are in the card we offer today." That's what the Chief Technology Officer, Kathy Bezin, said. That's over at Bank of America, essentially, okay? So if Bank of America kind of thinks that way, I'm assuming a lot of the other big banks, Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase and some of those guys, they probably think very similarly as well. Oh, there's kind of nothing new there or nothing that special or something like that, okay? Now Apple, they're saying Apple Card completely rethinks everything about the credit card. It represents all the things Apple stands for, like simplicity, transparency, and privacy. It builds on the incredible ease and security that millions of people love about Apple Pay. And it's the first card that actually encourages you to pay less interest. You can buy things effortlessly with just your iPhone, or use the Apple designed titanium card anywhere in the world. There's a picture of the titanium card there. Pretty cool looking card in my personal opinion. Like I said, no numbers anywhere on the card. I guess it just shows basically your first name, your last name. It's got the Apple symbol there, and it's got the chip there. So now if we take a look at this here in the next kind of slides I'll show you, right, you're going to see that basically the Apple card can keep track of basically your balance, what you owe, what you have available left, when payments are coming due, in a very easy to keep track of manner. Why? Because it's all available on your iPhone in the Wallet app. Now you can sign up for the card in no time and start using it right away with Apple Pay. Keep that in mind, okay? That's going to be important to come back to later. You can use it right away with Apple Pay. For every purchase you make, you get daily cash, and it really is cash, so you can spend it however you want right from the iPhone. Have a question, just text. It's that simple. And if you look here, it is pretty cool because it shows you kind of like your expenses. Oh, you spent this much on entertainment, you spent this much on food and drinks, you spent this much on shopping, and it keeps a track of everything in a very easy to keep track of manner. They show you different colors and things like that, how much you spent per day, your total spending budget, everything like that. Daily cash, no points, no gimmicks, no fees, not even the hidden fees, okay? We want to make it easier to pay down your balance, not harder. So Apple Card doesn't have any fees, no annual cash advance, over the limit, or late fees. No fees, really. And it is our goal with Apple Card to provide interest rates that are among the lowest in the industry. And so you hear all that and you're like, okay, that's great. That sounds pretty cool, okay? You obviously very easy to keep track of all your expenses. Now there are different apps out there that you can keep track of your expenses, okay? Many big companies have different apps that you can keep track of your expenses, and it might even line item it, with entertainment expenses or food and drink expenses, but they're usually separate apps. It's not, it's usually something you have to download or look for, and once again, not everybody looks for these type of things. The fact that you could get this card and you can basically just keep track of everything right there, that obviously obviously is a great benefit to a certain segment of the population, which is a big part of the population that just don't care about money as much, or just don't pay attention to it as much. At least they can start to care maybe a little bit more. Okay, so that is certainly cool, and no fees. Obviously, the credit card companies charge a ton of different fees, so that is good. So it seems like a product that is very interesting to many consumers out there. But once again, the question comes: why is Apple doing this? How are they making money from this? A lot of people are just like, it's not making sense. They're partnering with Goldman Sachs, okay? Goldman Sachs and MasterCard, essentially. Goldman Sachs and MasterCard are basically going to make all the direct money on this, interest rates and things like that, transaction fees, a lot of that. MasterCard and Goldman Sachs are going to make pretty much all that money, okay? Apple won't get much of that money at all, if any of that money at all, okay? So the question is, Apple makes no money? When did Apple get in the charity business? Last time I checked, Apple is probably the most profitable company in the history of the world. Why would Apple also, start doing charity work? That just doesn't make sense. Let's just start coming out with things that they help people, but we don't make any money off it, okay? And so there's a few different angles how Apple will actually make a lot of money off this, okay? The first is, remember we talked about Apple Pay. Well, it's Apple's goal to have basically everybody that's using an iPhone or an Apple Watch or anything like that. They want all of us individuals, including myself, Apple customers, to use Apple Pay. Right now, I don't use Apple Pay at all. Actually, I was transferring some money to a friend recently, a PayPal transaction, and he's like, why don't you use Apple Pay? I was like, oh, I never even thought of that. He's like, yeah, that's way easier. Apple wants everybody to be using Apple Pay. Why is this? Well, if you can get everybody that's, let's say 1 billion people out there use iPhones or something close to that. Maybe it's not 1 billion. Maybe it's, 500 million or something. If you can get all those people doing their transactions through the Apple Pay, then you just made it a lot stickier for people to stay in the Apple ecosystem and continue to buy new and new iPhones. So let's just look at an example. WeChat is a service, right? So if we look at WeChat, for instance, WeChat is worth, hundreds of billions of dollars. And basically on WeChat, one of the big things about it is people use that for transactions. So in China, everybody uses their phone, either their iPhone or their Galaxy device or their Huawei device or their Xiaomi or whatever it is. They use their phones to do all the financial transactions. I'm not just talking about online orders. I'm talking about if they go to a restaurant, a physical, location, they go buy some fruit from the local fruit stand down the street. They use their phone and basically, boom, it does a transaction right there, okay? WeChat is one of the huge services and Alipay is the other. And basically, how China is doing it and how the Chinese folks are doing it over there in China right now as far as doing transactions with their phone. That is the situation we're going to have in all the developed world. We just haven't got there yet, okay? We're not there in Europe yet. We're not obviously there in the United States yet. Some people do, transactions through their phones. Obviously you place an Amazon order. It's not like you go to your local restaurant right now, at least, or at least 98% of restaurants, and you're like, oh, just scan my phone and then you pay through there or something like that, okay? You don't go to the local business and you just, boom, you pay with your phone. 98% of the population is not doing that. A lot of folks still use cash, okay? Never mind debit, people like me that use debit cards for their transactions. Then you've got a huge population in the United States and probably Europe as well that still use cash for all their transactions, okay? My parents, for instance, they still use cash. They don't even use debit cards. They use cash like to buy things and whatnot. We're, as a society, we're going to move toward the Chinese way, which is essentially use your phone to do all the transactions. And if that is a huge possibility in the future, then imagine what type of opportunity that is for Apple, okay, in regards to Apple Pay. Let me explain now. Alrighty guys, first thing you got to understand about business is the greatest businesses don't make the most money from things on an upfront basis. They make it actually on the back end, okay? The best businesses, the most well-run businesses, they actually make money a lot of times from the back end and not the front end product. So although Apple probably won't make much money, if any money at all from the Apple credit card, it's doing something. It's helping consumers keep track of things better, maybe have a simpler way, maybe have more security in regards to a credit card. They feel that way, right? And so people are more likely to use that. If people are more likely to use Apple Pay and you actually use the Apple credit card, then they're more likely to stay in the iPhone ecosystem. If they stay in the iPhone ecosystem, that is the holy grail for Apple. Why? Because Apple gets the majority of their revenue and profits from the iPhone. For pretty much almost every iPhone that's sold, Apple makes several $100s of profit from that iPhone, okay? We're not talking about revenue, we're talking about profit, okay? And by the way, that's the same for Samsung as well. They make several $100s for every Samsung sold, all right? So iPhone is the holy grail for Apple. It's not just the holy grail in the sense of let's make a few $100s for selling each one, or, a few $100 profit for selling each one of those iPhones. But then the bigger thing is this, okay? Then those people are much much more likely to get AirPods, all right? AirPods is something that's starting to take off. I was in San Francisco, and I can tell you it seemed like almost everybody had AirPods. It was ridiculous, okay? You're much more likely to get an Apple Watch if you have an iPhone, okay? My wife, I got her an Apple Watch for Christmas. She absolutely loves that thing, okay? She loves her Apple Watch, okay? You're much more likely to get that if you have an iPhone. You're also much more likely to spend a bunch of money on services, whether it be Apple Music, whether it be buying movies, spending money on games or different things like that, different apps. You're much more likely to spend a bunch of money on the services if you have an iPhone. Obviously, if you don't, you're going to be spending money with Google then, okay? Because if you don't have, iOS, you don't have an iPhone, then you have Android, and you're going to be spending money with Google. Google is Apple's main competitor, okay? These guys are always fighting it out, all right? So it's one of them's getting your money. It's either going to be Google or it's going to be Apple in the end. Apple wants to keep people in the iPhone ecosystem, so they want people to be happy and have easy things to use, okay? That is all phenomenal for them. Also, people are going to be more likely to buy iPads if they have an iPhone. They're going to be more likely to have Macs, all right? They're going to be more likely to buy the Apple home devices like the Apple speaker, the Apple TV, things like that. Obviously, we know Apple's coming out with a video service. So this is why something like this is huge for Apple, because if they can get 100 million people or a few hundred million people using Apple Pay religiously, kind of like, Alipay does in China or WeChat does, right? Then all of a sudden they win in a lot of the developed markets, and it helps them fight off, all the other competitors in terms of the phone companies. It helps them mainly fight off Android, which, keep in mind, Apple's main competitor is obviously Google. Like, you might think like Apple's main competitor is Samsung or Huawei or Xiaomi. Those are, competitors of Apple, but mainly at the end of the day, the two guys that are fighting it out is really Google and Apple, because Google owns Android and Apple owns iOS, and you're either on one of those platforms essentially, okay? So this is a big competitive fight against Google. You might think, oh, it's Apple coming against the banks. No. You might think it's Apple coming against the other hardware phone manufacturers. No, it's Apple coming against Google. Those are the two dogs that are in the big fight, okay? Those are the guys that are battling out to, see who basically you run all your electronics. Are you going to be Android or are you going to be iOS? And Apple wants to do everything possible to keep its users as happy as possible, using services in the simplest way possible for them to understand. And if that means they come out with something, they brand it, they spend all this time and attention, Apple credit card, and even if they don't make any money on that, on the front side, it just helps so much in the back end, because it could help people stay in the ecosystem. And if you get used to using Apple Pay everywhere, and you got Apple Watch, and you got an iPhone and all these different devices, and you're just used to using all that, you're much more likely to stay in the ecosystem. And that's really how Apple is going to make a fortune off Apple credit card if it is a success. And once again, we don't know if this will be a success until at least a few months down the road, if not a year to 2 years down the road, okay? It's not something like you can tell initial demand, you're like, oh, that's going to be a smash success, oh, that's going to be a failure. For instance, AirPods were super hated on when they came out. People made fun of them. They were like, oh, it looks like you have little toothbrushes in your ear or whatever. Like, people made so much fun of AirPods. And now AirPods are like the hottest electronics you can possibly get anybody. Like I said, I was walking around San Francisco and I was looking at people, and I'm like at least 1 or 2 out of 10 people had AirPods in. And that's just crazy, because that's still, a first generation device. It just actually came out with the second generation now. So I can only imagine in a generation or two how many folks will actually have AirPods. And at first, the people were hating on that like crazy, and now everybody wants it. So it's just funny how it works. So we don't know if this will be a big hit until at least a few months down the road, if not a year or two, and then we'll see. Is this something that helped Apple get over that hump where everybody's starting to use Apple Pay, or are they still trying to get there, guys? So you got to think about this. This is how great businesses make money, man. They don't make so much money on the front side. They make a lot of money on the back side. This is a perfect example of that, guys. So that's how the Apple credit card is basically going to make Apple a fortune. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down there in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.